Your book, Vaccination is Not Immunization, was updated again, and I think in the newest version you included the Ebola outbreak, for, again, lack of a better term, that we had in 2014. Again, in this country, only, I think, a handful of people either were brought here for treatment or actually had the disease contracted from somewhere else. But yeah, it was panic.
Yeah.
What's the problem in that? Why did we get to that level when we're talking about, you know, a dozen people or less in the entire population?
Of course. It's a pattern now. It's a pattern that's been around since the second swine flu, since the avian flu. I call this pattern boutique epidemics, or made-to-order epidemics. So there's a pattern that they must follow. First of all, you identify a threat, usually in a foreign country, a viral threat, and then you identify a very small group of people who supposedly have just contracted this disease. Hopefully they died. That makes for a great story. And then you, with a very sophisticated and incessant media program, prognostications of the direst numbers of consequences, people dying, but every day. So it's just on people's minds in all forms of media. And then here comes the knight in shining armor. Here's the vaccine that's going to save us from all being annihilated by this dread disease. And in this case, you're right, just a few of, well, first of all, most of the people were in Africa at this time, and it is extremely likely, on my website, I have a whole chapter on the Ebola hoax of recent months, showing how it's very unlikely that the people who are identified with having recently contracted Ebola in Africa, whether they actually had it or not, because it's so difficult to diagnose. But then where the money is in America, right? So we must have the threat be here in America, clear and present danger, right? So then we had that guy, that Duncan guy in Georgia or wherever that was, he actually died. And that was the money shot right there, because right after that, that's when Obama mandated $6.2 billion to create vaccines. Now remember, it takes a year at the least to create a vaccine that is ready for the market. And yet these people, and yet the CDC was predicting that within 2 months there would be 150 million doses of that vaccine available. So this is the same pattern of the boutique epidemic that we have seen 6 times in the last 10 years. You make the threat, you have incessant media making people go into a panic, you spend the money for the vaccine, and then what happens? Poof, the threat disappears. I call it the case of the disappearing threat. So if we don't hear about it anymore, where was the original threat? Where did the threat go? You know, and people just don't get that. They fall for it over and over and over. And now organized media knows how anytime they need to make another few $1 billion, they know the steps that they have to go through. They know the pattern. The boutique epidemic works every time.